To the Ephesians, we hear Paul asking us to speak truth to one another. He says, "Let all of us speak the truth to our neighbors, for we are members of one another." Paul says, "Speak in a way so that your words may give grace to those who hear." I admit, I have read this section several times, but I have never paid attention to that verse. Speak in a way so that your words may give grace to those who hear. I wonder how often I model that. I know that when my kids were in school, middle school and high school specifically, that I allowed my career and all of the things that were going on in my head affect them and the way in which I communicated with them. They would come and they would want to talk to me about the joyous thing or the things that were hard, and I didn't seem to have enough time. I could not get it together and show grace and listen. I have since apologized to them and started modeling for some years on how we communicate with one another and how listening to each other is the most important thing in our world. That a career, that the things that are going on in our life, if the house is cleaned or not cleaned, or if the grass needs to be cut or not cut, those things are not important. And we're not going to think about if the house was cleaned last week or not today. And sometimes maybe we can have things slide in order to listen to one another. I've also always gotten caught up in this section about the anger part of not letting our anger go down, or keeping anger before the sun goes down. And I think anger is an easy emotion for us. I think being angry is something that we can do really easily, but being truthful and honest and opening ourselves up to being vulnerable might be a harder thing for us. Also, the other thing that I've always thought about that has gotten me all caught up and I get stuck in is about the stealing reference in there. For the life of me, I could not figure out why we were in a section all about how we're going to speak to each other in loving ways, graceful ways, and then all of a sudden we have this stealing thing. I don't know what was going on in Paul's world. I don't know if someone had taken something and he thought he would just throw it in there. I don't know. But then I started thinking, are we stealing something from one another when we don't speak the truth to one another? I wonder if that is what it's about in there. How often do we rob people of the truth? It sounds like in Ephesians to me that maybe the good old days weren't really as good as we'd like to think they were. In fact, maybe their world was a lot like our world, or vice versa. It sounds like communication is the problem that we seem to have in common throughout all ages. How is communication affecting our society right now, where we're at? We hear things on the news. There are amazing things being said in incredible, mean ways on the internet, in social media. I don't know if we can even, some of us can even sit down and have a conversation on, those big topics: religion, politics, vulnerability in our relationship. I'll edit that word. You guys, I think, can figure that out. It's hard. It's really hard for us to speak. In fact, it's hard for me to talk about those subjects as well and keep myself in a grace-filled way with the person that I'm talking with or listening to And I think listening is a huge component to the way in which we converse. And I've been wondering, what if when we go into a conversation with a person, we think to ourselves, you are a child of God, and Christ died for you. How would we speak to one another if we looked at them and said, Christ died for that person? How am I going to speak to them? How am I going to listen to them? I'm not quite sure what's going on in the world, and I don't know how to fix it. And I'm not sure, maybe a whole group of us can get together and start saying, no, some of these things just don't sound right to us. I'm not sure if that's the way in which I want my children to learn about how to communicate. I mean, it's almost embarrassing sometimes. You turn on the news and you hear somebody say something and you're like, oh my goodness, my kids are actually hearing that. And then what happens when your kids or your grandkids come to you and they say, did you hear what they said? Sometimes I'm really lucky and I get to say, no, I didn't hear it. You want to tell me all about it? That is an enjoyable conversation with my kids. Or my husband, who comes and shakes his head and says, I don't even know. Or I go to them and say, I have no idea what is going on. It doesn't look like the world in which I know. It doesn't look like how people in my world treat each other. And I can't seem to reconcile how it is going on in the world. Also, what has happened to professionalism? I don't get it. I don't personally have a Twitter. I have a Facebook, but it's really kind of private. I have my own issues with Facebook, the thing, about our right to privacy. It matters to me. I put pictures up, and I think all of my friends know where I stand because I'm not afraid to say how I feel about things, but that doesn't mean that I can't listen to someone else who has a different thought or opinion than I do. And I can agree to disagree with them on certain things. And I can agree to agree with them. I don't know how often we do that anymore. I'm not sure about that respect component in our communication in this world. We have people being fired over Twitter. This is an assumption that everyone has a Twitter to see if they're fired. I don't even know what to do with that. I'm not going to get a Twitter. I have no time for Twitter. I've just got no time. That would be something else that would take time away from other things, and I don't have that kind of time. Whatever happened to calling someone into your office or calling them on the phone and saying, Sally, you've been an excellent employee. You have brought this company this far, and we appreciate you. But we're thinking that your position is going to go like this, however that conversation may go. The point is that it's a conversation. You're respecting the person. You're showing them grace. They matter. They are a child of God. They deserve love and respect. And God is using them to change the world, just as God is using you to change the world. You are a child of God, deserving of love and respect. And God is using you to change the world. How are you being called from God to be that change in the world? I found some other verses throughout the Bible. There's one in Proverbs. I can't exactly remember which one it is. But it says, the truth is like a kiss on the lips. The truth is like loving someone. The truth is so important that it is how we love one another. Speaking to one another in ways in which give grace. And I know that I don't do it very often, as much maybe as I would like to do it. I forget, and things happen, and so I go out and I apologize. And I think that's giving grace as well. Saying, you know what, I'm sorry. Boy, I should have listened that day. Maybe I wasn't as kind to you that day, that when I said that, it came out wrong. I wonder what would happen in the world if people started doing that. Just saying, oh boy, did I flub up. I really stumbled there. And we are stumblers. We stumble all the time. We hurt one another, but we also love one another. You've heard that, but I think a couple of weeks ago. We do love one another. We help one another. We build each other up. We are those people. I was wondering if you guys would all indulge me and turn to a neighbor and tell your neighbor and take a moment to tell them, you are a child of God and Christ died for you. Would you do that for me? You are a child of God. Christ died for you. You are a child of God. And Christ died for you. I am so sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, I have a microphone on. Thank you for doing that, for sharing that. It seems really difficult until you do it. And maybe if we can just do it once, maybe it'll happen again. I think the good news is that we know how to agree with and be respectful with something that we don't necessarily agree with. I believe that we can disagree and we can be great friends. That is not something that can separate us. Amen.